Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Thank you again for joining this webinar series. This is the ProLink Plus webinar series. We've been hosting these events every about 3 weeks or so since kind of the early spring or early summer, late spring time period to address our Homeowner Assistance Fund solution and talk about our lessons learned and experience as we've started to implement ProLink Plus to support the Homeowner Assistance Fund across the agencies. Today, I'm really excited that we're joined by Ro Arrington, who's the Director of Homeownership and Public Finance for Arkansas Development Finance Authority, which is one of the states we are supporting with ProLink Plus for their HAF program. And if you did participate in our last webinar that we hosted a few weeks ago, I did give a little bit of a spoiler alert for what he is now joining us today to discuss, which is the Arkansas pilot program that has been running it started in June. So kind of since that time period, running through their experience so far and the success of that pilot. So I'm really thankful for his involvement, and I'm looking forward to the discussion with Ro. So moving through this slide deck here. Just to fill out our introductions, I'm Bree Kruder. I'm the EVP for ProLink Solutions, again, joined by Ro Arrington, Director of Homeownership for ADFA. And then we have Josh Brown, who's the Director of Strategic Initiatives from E&A team. And then finally, Leonard Magliola is a Senior Product Owner with ProLink Solutions, who's going to be presenting as well towards the end of our webinar session. So this is an hour-long presentation. I'm going to cover a brief company overview of ProLink, and then we're going to cover our case study with ADFA, with Ro, talking primarily about their pilot program experience. And then I will cover a little bit about the ProLink Plus delivery model. If you've joined some of the webinars in the past, this might be a refresher to you. We also have some new attendees. So I want to make sure that we cover a little bit of that information as well. And then we'll pass it to Leonard to provide kind of an overview demo of both our homeowner portal and our agency portal of ProLink Plus. So quickly going over our overview, ProLink has been in the affordable housing industry for about 23 years now. We really try to support all the different constituents across affordable housing, starting really in the space of multifamily tax credit. So serving HFAs in that space, as well as syndicators and investors and even developers with our products. We started serving the emergency fund deployment needs in the earlier 2000s with HHF. So that is kind of where our experience began in that space, and then taking that product from HHF and enhancing it to meet the program needs of HAF over the last several months. So that is where our work has steered from in the past. And we're really about building holistic systems that support all the different stages of the programs that we support. So thinking from HAF perspective, single family homeownership, from that initial application stage in HAF all the way through your audit and tracking, that is the process that we fully support through our systems. That's the point. And in addition to supporting all the different phases and all the different steps through these programs, we also want to do our best to connect our parties together, make sure that your teams are working solidly together in one platform that we can depend on together. So that is the way our systems are built. And our team is made up of dedicated individuals, some of which, this is a great representation in the speakers we have today. We work with partners like E&A team, and then we have our internal team made up of technologists and really industry experts in affordable housing. So we are dedicated to this mission, and we live and breathe it every day. We're here to be a partner for every agency that we work with. Quickly looking at some of our customers, you can see ProLink Plus listed at the top there. So we're currently working with ADFA and then Tennessee Housing as well. So that is the two clients that we are actively working towards their program go live with, and right now going through pilot launches and seeing the success that those are having so far since those pilots have gone out. We also support some ProLink HHF clients, ProLink HFA, which is our multifamily system that I alluded to earlier. And then AIM is that syndicator investor platform and tax credits that I mentioned as well. So with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and reintroduce Ro to the conversation to start the discussion on the case study. Again, if you were on the last webinar, you probably remember this slide kind of laying out the land of what Arkansas is working with. But I'm going to let Ro take it from here and give it justice through his testimony.
Thank you, Bree. And I don't know that I can get it justice. You know, it's funny when I get, you've had me scheduled for this webinar for a few weeks now. And as you guys know, since we have our team meetings all the time, I get really excited about this stuff. But now all of a sudden, I'm just kind of freezing up thinking, oh my gosh, now I've got these people that are watching me and I've got this this podium for a second. So in any case, I'll try to do my best and explain where we are and how we got there. Obviously, Arkansas, small state, 3 million people. We did not go through hardest hit. We did not receive any hardest hit funds. So we're coming at it from a different perspective of those who received hardest hit. And so I basically had to start from scratch, is my understanding on how we administer these programs and go on forward with them. And so this is just tells you where we are as a state population wise and what our population is like as far as what we're having to address in home ownership. Next slide. And the data-driven needs assessment. This is somewhere ProLink, Horn, who I'll get into a little bit, what you'll see a slide a little bit later about who our team is and how we came about assembling that team. But the data is what it is. And any of you who are working to try to submit a plan on this currently know that your data has probably evolved a little bit as Treasury has changed. They've moved the goalposts a little bit on us in different ways. But in any case, this is the data that we roughly started from. And if you'll see down there at the bottom, we were given a total allocation of 63 million, of which our administration costs were going to arrive at 9,499,000, which is where we derived our funding for our pilot program. And I'll explain how we structured that here in just a moment. So the team, when I started this, having no experience with trying to administer a Treasury program, none whatsoever. And when the governor asked us to do it as the state's HFA, I can be honest, I really wasn't too excited about it. This isn't what I do. This isn't what I've ever done. This, if I have a skill set, this certainly probably wouldn't be it. But in any case, we were given a task. And so we immediately moved to start assembling a team because we knew that we wanted to most likely outsource this because, again, we're a small state. We're a small HFA. We've got less than 50 employees here. And we're originating about $400 million in mortgages a year. To give you an idea, those of you where we are in our volume and where we are in our staffing, that would tell you that we needed other people. And so just like any of you who are in the HFA space, you talk to your peers. We talk to our peers a bunch. I haven't looked to see who the participants are on this call, but I'm going to guess probably some of you I've talked to. I've certainly seen you on our NCSHA calls and forums and conferences and such. But anyway, in visiting with my peers, it came back ProLink and Horn ProLink, as far as these are people that we've worked with in HHF. These are people we've worked with in other areas of where our HFA is operating. And so I guess it was ProLink had left a message at one end of my building with my president. And then I was trying to call ProLink from the other end of the building. And then we were talking about who we're reaching out to and so on and so forth. And it happened that way. And immediately we were visiting with them and others and other vendors. But it became clear to us, certainly after we looked at the platform, as far as the technology goes, the application, and how the software was going to work. We quickly arrived. We did not do an RFP. We declared essentially with the governor's agreement and the legislative approval an emergency and moved forward with a contract that we're very happy with at this point with the team of Horn and ProLink. Horn basically helping us with our plan and certain administration things, and ProLink doing a lot of the jobs, if not all of them, that Bree discussed earlier is what they do. So that's how we arrived there. And then on the pilot program, you look on the top of the screen, it has U.S. Bank and Service Solutions. We decided in consultation after we assembled this team to form our pilot program and go after the troubled loans that were in the population of mortgages that we'd originated through our HFA over the years. Over the years, through our bond and or TBA program, which is all I do now here, we had a population that was serviced solely, originally by U.S. Bank up until 3 years ago when they were replaced by Service Solutions, the wholly owned or operated servicer out of Alabama, both of whom we have a good relationship with. So we thought, all right, we've got ProLink and Horn run their program here. And if, as far as the pilot goes, let's reach out to the known population, people that we can contact, that we can use the call center that, by the way, Horn and ProLink helped establish for us, that we can reach out to them and try to help them first, because that's a known entity. And we've got a limited amount of resources to distribute initially in the pilot program. Of the 9.9 million, I want to say we've allocated 4.3 million to the pilot program. So we started off with our team working initially with Service Solutions. I'll be honest with you, U.S. Bank is, I guess their plate's full. They have not been the most cooperative working with us as far as sharing data, sharing an effort, helping develop a program and a platform that we can
Uh-oh. Do we have a frozen?
It has been a blessing that we had such a, I'll say, a limited rollout with a known quantity for our pilot, because we are learning this thing and I'm learning that I didn't know enough about it going in. But again, this is my first pandemic. So that's the team. And I don't know exactly, probably go to the next slide. We were actually ready to submit a plan based on the guidelines that everybody had been given. Now, Treasury absolutely was not, in my opinion, still is not ready to receive our plans, but we went ahead and rolled out our pilot program immediately then. And in a little bit, we'll get into the timeline as to when things rolled out and when we started funding. But we've actually funded homeowners. We have helped some folks, which has been great. I think we're at 24, which is a lot lower than where I thought we would be, but I so wholly underestimated the amount of work that it goes into making this application process just operable. And when anything that I could read as it relates to other Treasury programs, rental assistance, enhanced unemployment benefits, any of the programs that I read about, everything had to do, the slowdowns, the bottlenecks were all in the application process. So we've taken time to try to get this application that we we've tried to make it as streamlined as possible, but again, just mirroring the data has been very difficult. But we are very, very happy that it was July that this team actually started putting money out in people's accounts, or in the servicers' accounts, let's say. And I want to say we were most likely second in the country. New Mexico may have beaten us, I don't know, but we're pretty proud of that, and proud of the team for getting us going on that. Next slide. Right now, Josh, I don't know whether you're going to talk about this.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about that. Thanks, Ro. What we wanted to do here is just give a little bit of some additional visualization to the timeline that Ro's kind of been talking through, just to kind of give some perspective in people's mind about where we started and how we arrived at getting that money to the people who needed it. So starting on May the 4th was when the team was assembled, and discussions actually started happening about outlining the components of what this HAF plan was going to look like. These conversations took place over several weeks, really looking through the guidance and the information available from Treasury at that time and making certain decisions. Ro and his team, it's been a pleasure to work with them and how they make decisions and their desire to really help the people in their state and get this money to them quickly and design an efficient program. So during that process, Arkansas elected to go forward with the limited pilot program, which we've been discussing today, and they were targeting known homeowners in their portfolio of originated loans. So as we started down that path, starting on May 4th, we had some additional discussions that started taking place during that time, where we started doing some process mapping, as you can see in that section there. And that process mapping is designed to help the state kind of identify roles and processes necessary to administer the program and who might fulfill those roles. And if there's any gaps in the existing staffing, as Ro mentioned, they only have 50 employees. So there's sometimes some concern about internal bandwidth to man these roles. So those discussions were utilized to kind of figure out who would fill those roles. And it's important to note that process mapping takes place regardless of whether it's a pilot like we're talking about today, or if you don't need to do a pilot and you're just prepping for your full program. It's designed to help states identify where they may need that additional support or where you already have that existing staff to fill those certain roles. So you don't have to have this part figured out. The ProLink team and the service teams that come together can assist states in identifying who will fill those roles and making sure that you have all those gaps kind of covered. Now, so while certain decisions were being made, and in those discussions, configurations of the system were also happening at that time, and setting up user roles, customizing certain aspects of the system to the Arkansas specific branding, along with some verbiage in certain sections of the application, and trying to streamline that application as much as possible, as Ro mentioned. So all that was going on and testing the system and getting it ready to get the staff prepared. So on or about 6/15, you'll see there on June 15th, there was some training started for the various staff at Horn and at Arkansas for the roles that they're going to be doing. Testing of the system began. And then by June 21st, applications started to be put into the system. All right. So, and when that started happening, ProLink was right there with Arkansas, working with Horn, making sure that those applications were getting into the system, working through any problems that may have come up as they're trying to get those applications in a manner that can be reviewed. Just real one-on-one involvement there with Arkansas as they're working through that process. And then during that time, training is still going on. There's testing of the system. We're working through issues that were discovered, and training still went on through July 6th, as you can see there on the timeline. But by July 1st, staff was ready to start processing and underwriting those applications. At that point, they're really starting to dig into and determine the eligibility of those applicants and what the need is. How much money do they need to get their mortgage reinstated if they're behind? So again, working through those, ProLink and the partners were there closely with them, identifying problems, working through solutions, any potential issues that were maybe not previously identified that came to light as you're doing that work during that stage of the process. And by July 30th, as Ro mentioned, the first money went out the door. So 10 homeowners were helped. They got the money into those accounts at those servicers and got their much needed assistance as of July 30th. So that gives you just a kind of a visual of where it started and where it ended up, and just the culmination of actually getting the money out the door and to those homeowners and getting them the help that they needed was a great feeling. Now, through that whole process, a great deal of knowledge was obtained, and it continues to be gained as that pilot continues to operate. And that knowledge, along with this updated guidance that we continue to get from Treasury, has influenced the evolution of the HAF plan for the larger program. And as Ro mentioned, I think that is being submitted as we speak this afternoon to Treasury to get that to them for their review and approval. And ultimately, as you can see here, the next step in yellow, subject to Treasury approval, once we get Treasury's blessing on that plan, these service teams that are in place will continue to be right there with Arkansas with direct support for their staff and performing the work to stand up that full program, and then find any solutions to any issues that arise. If we need to reposition any of the components of the HAF plan based on responses from Treasury, for example, we'll be there to help them pivot with that. So basically, the goal is to just work with Arkansas to make sure that that system is working in the most efficient way possible to deliver the funding to those homeowners as quickly as possible, and providing the necessary reporting to ensure that compliance is maintained and to deliver Treasury what they need. And the key thing is there that ProLink's team, their business consultants, they're right there with the team at Arkansas, available daily just to kind of walk them through and make sure that they are there to work through any of those problems. So I hope this gives you a good visual of where things started and how we got to that first disbursement and where we're going from here. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ro for a little bit more discussion.
Okay, there's been a lot of lessons learned so far, and I'm sure, wow, who knows what lies ahead. But from our standpoint, one thing that we've had to really walk a fine line on with our partners is communicating that this is a pilot and it's not the main rollout. We've got to be completely sensitive as to anybody who might say, why is so-and-so getting help with their mortgage and we're not? And then also being able to explain this to the legislature or to the people that I answer to, and people that are in elected office that are kind of watching out as far as how we go about these programs, communicating to them, because for the most part, by and large, elected officials, they know HFAs are out there. But they're not necessarily wholly familiar with what we do and how we go about it. So that's been something we've had to be very sensitive to. As it relates to the servicer cooperation, I was naive going into this as to what our demand would be, and then also the cooperation and how people would react to us all of a sudden showing up here with 55 million, 65 million, whatever the number ends up being. I was wholly naive as it relates to that. I thought it made sense that, hey, Mr. Servicer, we've got a bunch of money we want to send you directly to make these loans good. We thought I thought, I'm certain that my teammates were saying, look at the naive guy, the guy on the mission here to get these funds out. Look at him being all excited. It's not going to happen that way. Well, it hasn't. Our cooperation when we started our initial outreach to the other servicers has not been favorable. On the other side of that, I don't know how we would have had a successful pilot program without our partners, Service Solutions, because they've been absolutely fantastic. But our initial outreach to the larger servicers in our pool, they yawn or when they take my call. As far as the data goes, I mentioned that earlier. It's going to be an evolution. how, as you all know, on how the data is transferred and working out a format where that makes sense and can speed up the process a bit. Staff capacity versus outsourcing, that was a no-brainer for us. We needed to outsource. And so far, it has been fantastic. And I'm glad that they're managing that capacity and staffing in the call center and the training center, in that I would have, let's just say, I would have guessed that we would have already been a lot farther along with Treasury and our ability to roll this program out than we are. So therefore, I'm glad I'm not having to deal with the staffing, and I'm glad that I outsourced it. As it relates to the program outreach, learning a lot, and that's another thing. We would have thought we would have been well into our full-blown media outreach program. Right now, it's been limited to spending a lot of time on the legislative level, reaching out for private meetings to make sure that people are informed, and that has paid big dividends for us as it relates to community involvement and political involvement. Let's leave it at that. So we're happy with our outreach. I've been completely underwhelmed with the reaction when our calls team reaches out to people who are eligible for the program. Certainly didn't expect people to tell me not to call them again. This is a scam, telemarketer, whatever. They don't believe us when we call them. And that is very, very frustrating. I understand it. Somebody's just calling me up in my home, said, Mr. Arrington, we understand you owe X amount on your mortgage with X, and we want to send you money. And of course, I'm paraphrasing, and we just want to send you money, and we're not going to ask you to pay it back. I'd probably hang up on me too. But anyway, I was wholly unprepared for the amount of skepticism that the call center and the outreach teams are encountering.
Yep. Similarly, through the pilot program, ProLink is a software provider, and us at E&A and other service providers also have some perspective on some lessons learned through the process. I'll just take a minute to kind of talk through a few of those at a high level. And so, like, system configurations can be done best through business process mapping. I talked about that a little bit earlier, about what that process entails. And it's really just going through with a fine-tooth comb, working alongside the state and the recipient, and defining what those roles are that need to exist to effectuate a good program, and who will perform them, and find out where there may be gaps that exist, and then provide solutions to those. And then the configurations are much more able to be done correctly when you have that level of detail through that process mapping. Additionally, it's important to allow sufficient time for testing before going live. Fastest is not always the best, so a lot of time is taken in mapping the processes and configuring that system. So you want to make sure that you have enough time to create a testing environment and get it live and have the process tested, so that you can work out any potentially unforeseen issues before you go live with the full production environment. I think that's very important, is to really have people in there testing what you have created based on the time that you spent trying to configure that. Additionally, pre-planning is important, but it's important to prepare for contingencies. I've always operated by the 5 Ps. Pre-planning prevents poor performance, and it still holds true here, but there really is no substitute for pulling the trigger and going live at a certain point. Plan everything as well as you can, test it, but understand you can't plan for every eventuality. So in knowing that, be prepared with a process to react to those unforeseen issues that might come up, and be nimble enough and have effective communication pathways to make those changes and iterate based on new info, which could be regulatory updates from Treasury. It could be new information gained once you make contact with your homeowners. As Rode described there, just some of the resistance to or non-belief of actually participating, just things like that come up, and then you kind of revisit how to approach those problems. It's also important to remember that software is a tool, and it's just one of the tools. It's important for professionals who can stay there right next to you and handhold applicants, and that plays a critical role. So making sure that you have that direct assistance right there with the folks as you are telling the software what it is that it needs to do. It has to be properly configured. Having those support professionals who understand the business process and the objectives of that, as well as the design of the software right there with you through that design implementation. And when you go live, it's extremely important. And it gives the states and the recipients and the staff there at the running the HAF program the support that they need to be successful. And finally, the pilot experience, that the experience gleaned from the pilot can be leveraged in the full program. The lessons learned from the pilot have proven to be, very informative for how we look at the full program. And the pilot programs make sense for some states, and some states have decided not to, and it's not required to do it. But what is important is that lessons learned from the operation of one state's pilot are still applicable and still help service teams that are working with future states to apply those same lessons learned. And it'll help us make those programs successful as well. So we're really thankful to be involved in the pilot programs that we are involved in, and the education that the whole team has gotten about this program has been very helpful, and that'll be leveraged in future engagements as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you. And Ro, we have a quick question from the audience that I think you might have a little input on before we move forward. We had a question. Could you talk about your outreach strategy for loans managed by third-party servicers? Did the servicers actually share contact lists / borrower information that allowed you to do direct marketing to impacted borrowers? And was the program outreach marketing done in-house, or what vendors did you rely on for that?
Okay, and going back to that first question, that's a really good question, because obviously the other third-party servicers are not going to give up their data, contact list, borrower information for the most part to us. And so we've started initial contact with a couple of other services in preparation for the rollout of the main program whenever that does happen. And we have hooked them up with the outreach team, which is wholly employed through our contract with Horn. And I assume ProLink is involved in the outreach there as well. But their marketing department at these servicers, who I can't name right now, are working with our outreach team and sharing of materials, experience, so on and so forth, really going both ways as well as far as the flow of information. But no, just with Service Solutions have we been sharing the actual contact list and borrowing. We're still not at that point with US yet. And let's see the second question. Yeah, again, it's all been farmed out. We're not doing any of the outreach ourselves, with the exception of the executives in the HFA. All of us are speaking to anybody who will listen from a political and community standpoint.
Yeah, and I think depending on the servicer, they're trying to gear up and kind of structure their HAF kind of group within those servicers as well. So a little bit of it, I think, is just internal planning and situating that might be causing delays. And this is a pilot, so this is the time to stir those relationships up and get them to respond and get on the same page and know what the expectation is going to be, so that both parties are successful in getting this funding allocated as quickly as we can. So, okay, going forward, I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for our demo today. And please continue to use that chat for questions. We'll answer as many as we can towards the end of the session for those remaining. So going into our delivery model quickly for ProLink Plus, this is a slide that we've used a number of times on these webinars to illustrate where ProLink Plus lives in the ecosystem of your HAF plan. So we have our homeowner portal represented on the left-hand side of ProLink Plus, and then we have the agency back-end portal on the right-hand side. We have our homeowner who is applying for those funds through the portal, an electronic submission process that's available to them both on their computer and through tablets or phones or other devices. It is accessible through mobile, and it is mobile friendly to be able to access that portal and submit that documentation. You can take pictures of that documentation and upload it. So as much as we can seamlessly provide that portal experience to our homeowners, we are doing so. We also have partners who we can rely on for providing call center support or potentially counselor support, and that depends on working with the state and understanding what their counselor community looks like, and then setting up those systems appropriately to reach those groups, reach those homeowners, and support them properly, including that paper application submission process that we need to consider as part of this program. Then you can see our program manager is kind of up there in the center here, and that may be the agency, or you may be outsourcing some of your program management effort. That is kind of the experience that ADFA has had in working with Horn, taking on some of that role. So that is the experience that they have overseeing all of these different areas. And making sure we are well coordinated and bringing up, rising those issues to the next level, to bringing those to the agency, working very closely with that agency staff through the process. On the agency back-end side, we have our processors and underwriting staff who are logging into that same system. So it's one system of record, homeowner portal applications coming in, being available then on the agency back-end, going through that processing and underwriting, and then finally those payments being dispersed out to those servicers, working with those servicers through that process, and our reporting going out to all the constituents. You know, we have our U.S. Treasury reporting, which will be updated when we get that guidance from them, but it is in place as it was required and last updated. We have our state agency reporting and dashboards, and then HUD as well. So all of the reporting needs need to be met. We need to be able to make sure we're marching and meeting those goals and expectations of the program along the way. From a delivery model perspective, so we are doing our best to support our agencies with a turnkey solution. And turnkey solution means a different thing to everybody. We want to fill in the gaps. So we are first and foremost a technology company, and we have ProLink Plus at our disposal, ready to go, ready to implement on its own. But we have also partnered with a number of service teams who can support these other areas, including, you know, Horn with Arkansas is a great example. We're working with some other partners with Tennessee right now. We continue to make those recommendations through our proposals for the different agencies that we're responding to for HAF. So that starts with program plan consulting. You know, obviously call centers are a large concern, underwriting and processing, program management, and other staffing needs. And then obviously compliance verifications and audits and quality control and all of those considerations as well. We want to make this as seamless as a process as we can for our agencies, and kind of pick up some stride where we can find it. So in working with these partners, having our training and having the experience that we have so far on the implementations we've worked through, we really do have a great team in place that's scalable with options for all of these different services. So something to keep in mind as you are considering the needs for your program. And then finally, we want to just kind of highlight some of our differentiators. A lot of them I've already mentioned to you. That turnkey solution model, we want to fit that puzzle that's right for your state, right for your agency. Customer service, that is one thing that I will say. You can build, I think I was saying earlier on the phone, technology is kind of turning into like the fashion industry where it's always changing. You need to keep up all the time. You know, there's always something new to build. The team behind the software is really important, and making sure that you have that good customer service experience and those good partners to work on that you can rely upon. I think that's evident through the testimonies we've heard today. Security. So our software is built on the Amazon Web Service platform. So that's where we host our software. Security is a growing and evolving thing, moving just as fast as technology. So we keep up on it. We make sure that we're certified and having very good discipline in that area. And then finally, we have kind of that customization consideration. What's different that you need that might not be out of the box or might not be the same thing that Arkansas needed. So that is something that we are very used to addressing through all of our tools that we support across affordable housing, really. I mean, no agency is the same as the next. So whether it's configurations, integrations with existing systems that you're concerned with, or customizations that are required, we can certainly go through it and make sure that they are the best choice for your agency and address those concerns. Okay, and with that, I am going to pass the rest of our time, about 20 minutes or so, to Leonard Migliola, and he's going to provide us with a live demo. As I mentioned, we're keeping an eye on this chat, and we can circle back on questions towards the end, and we can supply the Q&A as well after we end the webinar. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Leonard.
All right, thank you, Bree. My name is Leonard Migliola. I'm a product owner here at ProLink Solutions. I'm going to show you as much of a demo as I can of the application portal that the applicants will go into, and the back office management portal for managing the applications and getting those funds dispersed. What we're looking at here is our application portal, and it is mobile friendly, so we can view it on devices of a variety of sizes here. We do present or provide some automatic language translation abilities, and kind of get a look at some of the languages that are supported here right now through Google Translate. It is something that we are targeting for accessibility standards for the WCAG AA level of accessibility, and also Section 508 accessibility as well. In order to start the application process, applicants will come in and create an account. And so I'll step you through part of that here, but I'm not going to fill out a whole application because that would take me a few minutes longer than we have time to complete right now. But it's still a fairly quick and easy process to do these to enter these applications here. Once we have created our account, all of our application information will be available in the back office after we get through the pre-qualification steps. Multi-factor authentication is part of the system. If you do want that for your agency, that is optional. You can turn it on to require that folks will validate their email address and receive text messages in order to log in when they set up their application. But again, that's optional if your agency does or does not want to use that particular feature. Once I create my profile or create that registration there, I'm going to get an email message here with a code, so I can verify that email address real quick. Just give me one moment while that comes in here. And then we should be able to get into the next step of the process here, which is, how did we find out about this particular program? These options here are customizable for your agency, so we can set those up as you need to. And then we give the applicant the opportunity to select a program that they want to apply to. Presently in this demo, we're only showing a single program for the Homeowner Assistance Fund. We do have the ability to provide multiple options here, and the applicants can select one to continue their application through the process. We'll select that program, move forward into the next step. And then it's going to ask us for some basic information here so we can get that profile set up the rest of the way. And this question here for county and number of household members is going to be so that we can target an AMI-based question in the pre-qualification questions where we can screen people out of here. So we do need to know what county and how many folks they have living in their household at a time. We'll go to the next step. We'll get to our pre-qualification questions here. These are completely configurable for your agency, and they can be changed over time as the needs of your agency change. And the answers that are acceptable to be pre-qualified are completely configurable by you including accepting either answer to these questions if that works out best for your particular program. Let me go through and answer these questions here that we have set up. Not in bankruptcy. And here's that AMI question I asked about. So this dollar amount here is specific to the application that I'm filling out right now based on that county and number of household members that we have. So now that I've answered all of the questions, I can check my eligibility. If I am eligible, I will be taken to our application where I can actually start filling out the application and get that completed and entered. If I'm not eligible, I will be presented with a screen that will provide me with additional contact information for folks that I can reach out to if I would like to discuss my application or other options for getting assistance. This application here, brand new, we just created this. These boxes here tell us what we have completed in the process and what we haven't yet completed. In this particular case, we haven't completed anything because this is a brand new application. But as I said before, I'm going to jump over to another application here just to speed up this process a little bit so you're not watching my data entry skills here today. When we created the application, we were assigned an application number. We are assigned an intake clerk automatically on a round robin basis from a pool of available individuals. And later on in the process, we do automatically assign folks in other roles to help process these applications as well. Let's take a look at the data that we're going to enter as we are submitting an application. We'll ask for some basic homeowner information, including your social security number, marital status, your language, whether or not you're a veteran. We do support collecting information about both co-borrowers and spouses who may or may not be the same individual on particular applications. We will collect details on contact information, phone numbers, property address, what county they're in. We've already collected earlier on in that process. How many folks are living at the address and how many dependents there are. We'll collect mailing address. And then optionally, we can collect self-identified socially disadvantaged status for the applicant. And we can customize this language to your agency's needs and even the options and answers that they can select here to that question. They can be customized as well. If this is not something your agency wants to see in the application process, we can also turn off this question if that's what you would like. Following the socially disadvantaged question, we do ask some ethnicity, race, and gender information. This is primarily for purposes of reporting to Treasury on a quarterly basis under the assumption that that's how it will be done, similar to HHF. And then finally, we will, on this particular screen, we will ask the applicant for information about their particular hardship, also configurable to the types of hardships your agency wants to support. And we will also ask them to fill out a narrative statement describing what their particular hardship is. And so we can do some reporting on these values and also get a little more detail on this particular applicant's situation. Under our employment info screen here, we can collect details on any unemployment benefits that the applicant may be receiving. We can also collect any information about current employment, if they are currently employed, including who their employer is, how long they've been with that employer, et cetera. We will also collect similar information for co-borrowers if we have them on this particular application here. Under property, we've got some basic property information we've already submitted. We're also going to ask some questions about the last known appraised value of the property, what the applicant is currently doing with that property, what they intend to do with that property in the future, details about who's paying the property taxes and whether they're current or not, insurance information for the property, and also whether it's current or not, and then judgments as well, and whether or not there have been any particular judgments on the property that the applicant can fill out some details for. And then also we have the ability down here to add additional expenses for which the applicant may want to apply for assistance. So if your programs are offering assistance for HOA dues, utilities, internet services, property taxes, anything of those types, the applicants will be able to come in here, select some of those additional expenses that they can get benefits for. They can complete all of the details, including account numbers, how far past due they are on these items, who's responsible for making those payments, et cetera, and fill those out. And those will all become options in the back office for providing assistance to applicants and actually making payments for those applicants in the future. The mortgage information screen here collects details about up to 4 mortgages on this particular application, and we collect details on who the servicer is, the lender if it's available, loan number, balances, past due amounts, current monthly payments, interest rates, federal loan programs, foreclosure details, and whether or not there's any current forbearance on this particular mortgage here. So a lot of details we can collect to help prioritize and process and underwrite these applications. Going on to the financial info screen, we can collect details on the income for the household, including the homeowner's income and any other additional income sources that the applicant may have or the household may have for this particular application, giving us a total gross income. And then down below, we will summarize some of the expense information that we already know about, like the mortgages and those expenses, say HOA dues or utilities that we had collected on that prior screen. And if there are any other types of expenses that might not be eligible for benefits of one type or other that should be included in the income and expense analysis, those can be added down here as well, so we can get a total amount of expenses that this particular applicant has. Once we've completed that, we do have one more section here, and that's whether there's any bankruptcy going on for this application, and so the applicant can fill out those details as well. Once we've filled out all of those application details that are required, we can come to our review and submit screen. This review and submit screen is going to summarize all of the fields that we've already entered into this application, and we will also provide to the applicant, once the application is fully submitted, a PDF document summarizing all of these details as well that they'd be able to download for themselves. If any particular data point on this screen had been missed, they will see a red icon here. That section would automatically be opened up as opposed to collapsed here, and we would make it very clear which fields they're missing on so that they can very easily jump back to that section and fill out any of those missing data points that we still need to get some information on. So we make it pretty clear what's missing and what you still need to complete in order to get through the rest of the process here. We come down to the bottom of the screen here. We do have the ability to collect a DocuSign signature on a hardship affidavit or other documents that are all packaged together, such as executed authorization forms that you may want to have them signed through DocuSign. This is an optional feature if you don't want to use DocuSign for your particular agency. We also have the ability to allow the applicants to just type in a signature along with the date and then be able to submit their application that way instead. I'm going to go ahead and kick off this DocuSign here just to step through that so I can get this application submitted the rest of the way. And I will get an email message here in a moment with that information. So if we can just bear with me one moment while I click on that. And on this particular form, there's a few fields that I'll fill out manually, but we do have ability to pre-populate fields in these forms as well. As you'll see, we've got my name in here. In this case, I'll fill these out real quick and we can sign this document. Sign the hardship affidavit. And now that's signed. And it will take maybe up to, I think, 20-30 seconds for that to get reflected in the back office after I sign that. And it will also, I think, give me an option here to save copies of the documents locally if I would like to. All right, let's jump back to our application here. So it still says pending here right now. See if we can get that to update and show us our signed status here in a moment. I'm not going to wait too long. The next step is really we will submit the application using this submit button once it recognizes that we've signed everything completely. And then following that step, the applicant does have access to the final screen on here, which is the supporting document screen. We'll see it does show that I've signed the application now. I can now fully submit that application. In the back office, this application then moves from a stage that we call registered to a stage that's called submitted, which means it's ready to be picked up by somebody and start the processing here. So you can see I've submitted my application. It tells me we're now in the submitted stage. It's showing us the supporting files box here so we can click on that and upload other documentation we'll need for our application. It's also assigned me a counselor which could be a third-party counselor from an external agency, and we can weight and assign those based on the capacity of the various agencies to assist people in different counties there. We also present some information about the current stage, what they can expect with the current stage, and other details like that. If we go to our supporting files that I mentioned previously, this list of customizable files is available, is customizable for everybody, and they can upload all of that supporting documentation as they need to. And so you can see there is some documentation that we've already generated, including that hardship affidavit and that application PDF that I mentioned earlier with all those details. So once we have a submitted application, we can jump into our back office software. This is the back office software here. We're looking at the MyQ screen. The MyQ screen is a screen where everybody who comes into the system can come and see what applications they are assigned to. So in this particular case, if I wanted to see what Kate was assigned to work on, we can quickly and easily jump to her applications. We can filter those down to the applications that have been prioritized upwards so that she can focus her work and get help to people who need it the most right now. I can jump into an application here and just show you around what it looks like inside an application. Probably the most important screen here is our program qualification screen, where we can look at a lot of the details that we need for underwriting this application, such as what is their income, what percent of AMI are they at right now, what kind of income verification method do we use, do they self-identify as socially disadvantaged, what is their hardship reasons that they gave us, and a variety of other details there. Ultimately, when they are approved for assistance and given an approved amount for their application, we can take details of their mortgage that they previously entered and some of those other eligible expenses that they previously entered and start scheduling out disbursements. And so for this particular application, if we wanted to create 5 monthly disbursements and a single one-time catch-up payment of $13,000, we can configure that here. And when this application has gone through the closing process and finished that, we will automatically create payments for all of these disbursements that we've scheduled out here on this particular screen. We can also see here the pre-qualification questions that the applicant has answered from the portal. We can see under this homeowner application screen all of the details of their individual data points that they applied or they entered into the system. We can see all those expenses they entered, and very importantly is the program stages screen. I talked a little bit about the stages that were in this process earlier, such as being registered and submitted, but our applications all go through a strict set of stages from qualification, underwriting, closing, disbursement, monitoring, and completed. And each one of those stages has fairly strict requirements about what needs to be done before you can move on to the next stage to make sure that we're doing all of our due diligence. And some of that due diligence is even agency-defined checklists, so items that have to be completed before you can even move on to the next stage in the process. This particular checklist here only has one item on it, but we would not be able to advance this application to the next stage until we've completed all of these items in this particular for this application in this particular stage here. So that helps us make sure we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. We have the ability to do some loan tracking. If you have forgivable loans, I'm not going to show that right now because I know I only have a couple of minutes here to show some things. We also do have the ability to monitor and process and import and queue up CDF records. And CDF, for those who don't know, is the common data file. It's a protocol for communicating with servicers about potential loans that could be provided benefits for, and those for which we're actually sending payments. And it helps define to them how payments should be applied to various loans. There are a variety of ad hoc reporting tools we have in the system, including our data views, which allow you to customize, which allows you to look into our database tables, customize which columns you see, filter the records in the data views down to just those applications you want to see. You can save predefined views of filters and columns into what we call views here, so that you can return to them regularly for reoccurring business processes. And you can also export that data into Excel for processing in other ways. We do have a bunch of canned reports here, including the Department of Treasury report, which is due quarterly and will have to be updated once we get some additional guidance on that. And we do have quite a few utilities here for supporting the applications as well. Most importantly is the disbursement utility, which allows us to search for pending disbursements by a variety of criteria, check those off, export those to a file that your accounting or finance department can use to make those payments. And then the utility allows us to report back on that payment status, which integrates with our CDF system for reporting those details out to the servicers. Kind of out of time here, but we do have a large variety of administrative tools and functions in the system as well to help smooth over the processes for you. If you are interested in seeing more, I certainly encourage you to sign up with us for a much longer demo.
Great. Thank you, Leonard. I'm going to just take back the screen here to share just our follow-up and wrap-up. As Leonard said, if you are interested in seeing a much deeper dive, we usually spend about 90 minutes covering as a kind of intro level to our homeowner and agency portal demo, going into a lot more detail. So if that's something you're interested in, please feel free to contact us for that. Thank you so much, Ro, for joining us today. I think you added so much to the conversation today. It's evident by the chat and the participation. So thank you for joining your peers and sharing your experience so far.
Thank you all very much for having me.
All right. And of course, Josh, we always appreciate your involvement as well. And Leonard, great job. So following up on our next webinar event, we are going to host one on September 8th. 1 p.m. Eastern time is our normal time that we use for these webinars. So please stay tuned for that. Ryan is going to post the registration link in the chat to make it easy to go ahead and sign up for the next one. And then if you did post a question in chat and you're looking for your answer, please look for the email follow-up that we'll be sending as soon as we can after we hop off this webinar, which will include the Q&A from today. So we appreciate all the attendance and we look forward to the opportunity to connect with you again. Thank you and good luck with your HAF plans, and please let us know how we can help you get to the finish line here. So have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.